So if we ask ourselves, what can we take home, we can begin with questioning the main terms. The whole conference was about living a life of presence. We can start asking ourselves, if we come home and our friends ask us, well, do you know now what is life? What is presence? We have to be able to give some sort of an answer. And we all came with some idea, and it was enriched. My own ideas about life and about presence were enormously enriched during these days. And each one takes a very different package of new ideas and new experiences back home. So I can only tell you how I now see life, how I would now answer the question, what is life? How I would now answer the question, what is presence? And then you can check that out against your own. Each one of us has a very different answer to these questions. And then I think what we can take home with us will quite easily and quite organically emerge from these questions. So let's start with the question, what is life? What is life? One thing that all the different speakers here made clear for me is that you cannot grasp it. You cannot put it into intellectual terms. You cannot grasp it. And yet you have to deal with it. You cannot grasp it, but you can understand it. There's a great difference between intellectual grasping and understanding. We all understand life. We all can understand life by opening our hearts to it, by letting life do something to us. It's like swimming. In order to know swimming, it doesn't help you to hear lectures or read books. You have to get into the water. And so when we go home, what is life will show itself by the way in which we live our daily life. And this strange coincidence that you cannot grasp it, but you can understand life when it takes hold of you, when it grasps you. That shows us that life is mystery. This word mystery is a very important word, and it came up at least under the surface in almost every talk that we listened to. Mystery. Mystery is not something mystifying. Mystery is an actuality. I don't even call it reality. It's an actuality with which we have to deal in our lives, and it is characterized by the fact that you cannot grasp it intellectually, but you can understand it if it grabs you, if it does something to you. You can really understand mystery. Some people call it God. I'm very careful with this God word because there are probably as many definitions of God in this room as there are people here. It's very difficult, and people have their own ideas. But if you speak of mystery, then you really talking about what those who use the word God correctly mean. That with which we as human beings have to interact. We are built that way, with that mystery. We have to interact with it. We cannot grasp it ever, but we can understand it when it takes hold of you. Like music, we heard all this wonderful music here. How can you grab music intellectually. What can you say in terms, in intellectual terms about music? And yet you understand music when it does something to you. And when it does nothing to you, you say, I don't understand that music. But when you say, I don't understand it, that doesn't mean intellectually you can't analyze it. You never can analyze it intellectually. It means it doesn't do anything to me. And the same with mystery, that mystery which we call God. And in that mystery, we live and move and have our being. That's that wonderful sentence that St. Paul, when he speaks in Greece, in Athens, he preaches about God, and he speaks to people who are simply human beings. He can't presuppose that they are Christians or even Jews, simply human beings. As a human being to human beings he speaks, and he says, in God we live and move and have our being. And in this mystery that we call life, we live and move and have our being. And that is a very different notion from God than this God over there or up there above the clouds. That is life in God. And that is what really counts, and that is what the human reality of that great mystery, that great divine mystery is. And as I said, human beings have to face that mystery. We are brought step by step in our lives to something which we cannot fathom, but with which we have to deal. Something with which we have to deal, to which we have to expose ourselves. Bernard of Clairvaux, a great medieval mystic, says, concepts, that which you can grasp, gives you knowledge. But that which grabs you gives you wisdom. And that is what we want. We want wisdom. And we are led through life, through this process of life. Every human being is led towards wisdom. That is the direction. And we are led through three great questions, three existential questions which no one can avoid sooner or later in life. And the first question, and very often children ask these questions already. They are very good. They are great philosophers if you allow them, at least before they go to school. And they ask questions like this. They ask, why? Why? All the time. Why is there anything rather than nothing? Why is there anything rather than nothing? We don't know. We have to let ourselves down into this question in silence. So every human being has to let ourselves down into that silence of why? Why? Why is there anything? Why am I here? Why can I ask why? Amazing. And the second question is, what? What is it? Glass of water, yeah. When you look long enough, it becomes completely mysterious. You look at anything, of course the flowers, of course another human face, but your own hand, your own big toe, what is it? And somehow this too confronts us with mystery, but in a very different way from the question why. Why leads us down into the silence, but what leads us to a deep understanding that ultimately it wants to say something to me. Everything that there is wants to speak to me. Is ultimately a word that comes out of that mystery and speaks to me. And if I listen carefully, if I open my heart, I can understand it. I can't grasp it. I can't put it into words, but I can understand it. And when we look at anything in the world and ask ourselves, what is it? We find it is ultimately word that speaks to us. And now we have silence, and we have the word, we have the why and the what. And the third great question is, how? Life, how? How can I live it? How can I live it? By doing it. The how is always a question to doing it. And what do? We listen so carefully to this word that it leads us into the silence from which it comes. And understanding is the process by which we listen so deeply to the word that it takes us into the silence from which it comes. And that is a third way in which we interact with that great mystery, with that divine mystery towards which we are set in our life. And that is life, this interaction. And in order to really go into the silence, we need courage, we need trust. That is the first and most important thing that we need in order to open ourselves to life. Trust in life. That is very difficult, but it is the only way in which we can live, because the opposite is fear. Those are the two great choices we have in life. The only basic choice. Will I trust or will I fear? Will I trust life or will I fear? And by all means, let's make sure that we don't confuse fear with anxiety. Life is full of anxiety. Anxiety is inevitable in life, but fear is resistance against this anxiety, while trust goes through it. Anxiety, the very word anxiety, comes from the Latin angustia, which means narrowness. Life always leads us into narrow spots that we have to go through. We even came into this world, into this life, through a very narrow spot, but we did that very courageously. Those little babies, they don't yet think about it. It gets much more difficult when we grow up. Then too, whenever a narrow spot comes, we have to trust and go through with the same trust with which a baby is born, and that turns out to be a new birth. If we look back on our lives, we see, how many anxious moments, how many difficult, narrow spots we have gone through, and each one became, if we trustingly went through, became a new birth. So that is really encouraging. We can't see it when we look forward. When we look forward, we only see the narrow spot. But when we look back in our rear mirror, we see, we have come through these narrow spots many times, and it was always a new birth, always a new birth. And that could give us courage to go forward. That's what we need. So in order to let ourselves down into that silence, we need trust. And now, if we trust in life, now we are prepared. Now when the next thing comes along, we will ask, what does this word say to me? We will listen. What does it say to me? And we want to be surprised. And that is the other great virtue that we need in life. Faith, trust, and hope. And hope is openness for surprise. We should open our eyes in the morning saying to the new day, surprise me. And it will surprise us. It will not always be the surprises we want, but it will always be the surprises we need to grow and to be fully alive. So trust, faith, hope, and if you have that, this doing, that's the answer to the how, this living with trust and hope will be love. And love can easily be understood as the yes to belonging, a wholehearted yes to belonging, to mutual belonging, an existential yes to belonging limitlessly. That is love. Yes to limitless belonging, mutual belonging. And so if we have this trust, this hope, and this love, then we know, we understand what life is. We understand it by entering into it, by encountering mystery. That's one way in which one can point towards what life is. It's an encounter with mystery. It's a continuous encounter with mystery.